Every day, someone receives the best news of their year. For someone, it's a promotion. For someone else, the keys to a new home, a child, a diagnosis that came back negative, a dream they thought would never happen. For a while, everything feels different. But something happens next. Something so ordinary, almost nobody notices it. This film isn't about losing happiness. It's about what happens after happiness arrives. Because that's where almost every story quietly changes. Before we continue, this film is part of a larger investigation called Protocol Multiverse. Punchline Protocol explores the human experience through the questions we rarely stop to examine. Darkside Protocol explores the hidden systems that quietly shape that experience. DEBRIEF Protocol connects both perspectives and reveals the patterns that only become visible when they're seen together. If you'd like to follow the complete investigation, you'll find every chapter in the description below. Now, let's continue. Before we move on, stay with that moment. Think about something you once wanted more than anything, not something small, something that divided your life into before and after. Maybe it was your first home. Maybe the job you worked toward for years. Maybe the relationship you thought would finally change everything. Or maybe something much quieter. The phone call you were waiting for. The words you hoped to hear. The results you were almost afraid to open. For a moment, it felt like life had finally moved. Like everything that came before had been leading here. And then, life continued. Not because the moment wasn't real, because moments don't know how to stay. The strange part isn't that happiness fades. Everyone already knows that. The strange part is how completely you stop noticing the thing you once couldn't stop thinking about. It doesn't disappear. It simply stops introducing itself. One day, it becomes the background of your life. And backgrounds are rarely admired. At first, that seems like a simple explanation. Maybe excitement just wears off. Maybe that's all this is. But if that's true, why do some dreams disappear faster than others? And what exactly changes the dream or you? Maybe the excitement simply faded. That's the explanation most of us accept because it feels obvious. Every new experience eventually becomes familiar. Every achievement eventually feels ordinary. The first day in a new home becomes another evening on the couch. The job you couldn't stop thinking about becomes another Monday morning. The relationship that once made time disappear becomes a conversation about groceries. It feels as though happiness quietly left the room. But something about that explanation doesn't quite fit. Because the dream didn't disappear the day you achieved it. It disappeared only after something else arrived. You rarely notice the moment when wanting becomes having, but you almost never notice the moment when having becomes maintaining. You stop imagining the future because now you're busy protecting the present. The house needs repairs. The promotion brings expectations. The relationship asks for attention. The child you dreamed about now wakes you up at 3 a.m. Nothing went wrong. Nothing was taken from you. The dream simply received a new job. And maybe that's the moment we should be paying attention to. If maintenance is the reason dreams disappear, then this pattern should exist everywhere, not just in careers, not just in relationships. Look closely, and the same transition seems to repeat itself. Freedom becomes responsibility. Achievement becomes expectation. Ownership becomes maintenance. Even health often goes unnoticed until something interrupts it. We spend years trying to reach a place where life finally feels stable. Then once we arrive, most of our energy shifts toward keeping it that way. Without realizing it, we stop building the future and start protecting the present. It almost feels as if every fulfilled dream quietly transforms into a list of things that must continue. At this point, the evidence seems convincing. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe dreams don't disappear at all. Maybe they simply become responsibilities. But there's a problem. Some people carry enormous responsibility without losing the dream. Others lose the dream almost immediately, even when very little changes. If maintenance were the cause, the pattern would be much more predictable. It isn't, which means we're probably looking at a symptom, not the cause. We've been assuming that something happened to the dream after it came true. But what if nothing happened to the dream at all? What if the dream did exactly what it was supposed to do? Every dream exists in the future. It gives direction because it lives somewhere ahead of you. It organizes your attention around a version of life that doesn't exist yet. The moment it becomes reality, it stops being a dream. Not because it failed, not because you stopped appreciating it, simply because it has crossed the only boundary that made it a dream in the first place. You didn't lose the dream. You reached it. And the moment you reached it, it could no longer continue doing the job it was created to do. Maybe we've been mourning the wrong thing all along. We thought we were grieving lost happiness, when in reality, we were experiencing the disappearance of anticipation. The quiet force that had been pulling us forward suddenly had nothing left to pull toward. That's why the achievement itself often isn't the end of the story. The real question begins immediately afterward. Because if every fulfilled dream automatically stops being a dream, then what is supposed to replace it? Most people assume they need another achievement, a bigger house, a better position, more money, another milestone somewhere farther ahead. Sometimes that works for a while. Sometimes it doesn't. Because replacing one completed dream with another isn't always enough. The real question isn't whether you still have goals. Most people do. The question is whether anything still feels capable of pulling you forward the way your old dream once did. There's a difference between managing the future and being called by it. One fills your calendar. The other changes your direction. And once you've experienced that difference, it's surprisingly difficult to mistake one for the other again. Maybe that's why some people appear successful but quietly feel motionless. Their lives continue expanding, yet nothing inside them feels like it's moving. They aren't missing achievements. They aren't missing responsibilities. They aren't even missing gratitude. They're missing tension between who they are today and someone they're still becoming. Because dreams were never valuable only for the moment they came true. They were valuable because, long before that day arrived, they gave ordinary days a destination. And without something that genuinely belongs ahead of you, even a full life can begin to feel strangely complete, in the worst possible way. So maybe the question was never why happiness fades, and maybe it wasn't why responsibility replaces excitement. The real question was what happens when a dream finishes doing the very thing it was meant to do. It carries you toward a future that doesn't exist yet. Then one day, that future becomes your present. From that moment on, the dream can no longer guide you because you've already arrived where it was pointing. Nothing has been stolen from you. Nothing has gone wrong. The dream didn't abandon you. It completed its purpose. The emptiness that sometimes follows success isn't proof that success was meaningless. It's simply the space where a future used to be. Not because joy has an expiration date. Dreams were never designed to become permanent places. They were designed to become bridges. Bridges are meant to be crossed. The mistake isn't crossing them. The mistake is standing in the middle of one, wondering why it no longer feels like a destination. Maybe that's why the best day of your life almost never stays the best season of your life. Not because joy disappears, not because gratitude fades, and not because success secretly disappoints us. It happens because every dream eventually reaches the place it was always trying to reach. The moment it arrives, it quietly stops being a dream. We often mistake that ending for loss when, in reality, it's completion. The bridge didn't collapse. You simply reached the other side. Perhaps the real tragedy isn't that dreams come to an end. Perhaps it's that no one tells us they were never meant to become destinations. They were meant to move us. And maybe the question we should ask after every fulfilled dream isn't, why doesn't this feel the way it used to? Maybe the better question is, what future is asking me to walk toward now? If this investigation changed the way you look at something you've experienced yourself, subscribe to Punchline Protocol. Every investigation begins with an ordinary observation. Then we follow it until it reveals something most people never notice. Because sometimes the most familiar parts of life are the ones we've never really examined. If this film helped you recognize something, Punchline Protocol is where we investigate human experience. Dark Side Protocol explores the invisible systems shaping that experience. DEBRIEF Protocol connects both into a broader understanding. 3 perspectives, 1 investigation. Welcome to the Protocol Multiverse. The ideas are human. The narration is digital. The interpretation remains yours.